But the power was always there from the 289. Of course, they went to the 427 cubic inch 7-litre monster later on, but I love the 289. I just think the proportions are so sweet.
Beautifully proportioned.
We got an onboard camera with Eric van der Poel. Is going to be in that car. He's a late entry. He's a former Formula 1 driver. Man always wears a cowboy hat. A lot of success out in America.
A lot of success here in the 24 hours.
I think he won it 3 times. Yep.
Yeah, sharing that with Robin Greenhalgh. So one of the many Shelby Cobras in this field. But
yeah, oh dear, we got a problem with the Bizzarini 50 car.
Well, that was starting 4th on the grid.
That's the Hazelman family outing, Loris and Liam.
Yeah, they've had a lot of trouble with that car all through the weekend.
By the way, the Corvette is a 1963 C2 split window, Olivier Biotto.
I think there's an earlier one. I think there's a C1 as well somewhere. I'm fairly sure I saw on my strolls around the paddock. But with 56 cars, it's not the work of a moment to just find it in a long, long entry list.
Just these Daytona Cobras, and we were talking about Peter Brock earlier.
Yeah.
None of these are the original 6. I think 6 cars they built, and it was 6, maybe a 7th. But all these are replicas, and.
Well, we're going to start behind the safety car, just to reiterate. The SC board is held next to waved yellow flags around the circuit.
And the 2 hours has started. So
yeah, we're underway.
Yeah, we are underway, although these are not green flag laps. These are race laps. And the reason that they do that, of course, is because there's no point in doing the formation lap only to go slowly for another lap. So effectively, this becomes a formation lap and a race lap because of the slower speed.
Good idea.
And yes, in terms of keeping the race moving, keeping the calendar moving, absolutely agree. Very, very dark outside.
Yeah, it's falling quickly, but so even more reason to let them go around now and see the circuit as the light disappears. Get a last chance to spot really where the water's
down in 48th place. I'm not sure. Must have had a problem in qualifying. Richard Mines and Rob Huff.
Yeah.
We saw Rob going very quickly at the beginning of the day. We know Rob is going to be quick in that car. And Richard is swift also.
It's always quite nice from our point of view as commentators to have drivers who have to come up the order. But today, in these conditions, falling light, slippery conditions, the rain has eased a little bit, but it was basically for quite a while it was steady drizzle. That was after it was heavy rain during the Group C. So caution is definitely going to be required.
I think, Bruce, you're absolutely right. That track is still pretty damp. You can still find a Rooster Tails coming off, but it's not as bad as it was in that horrendous earlier race we had.
The Group C, how the Group C guys kept it on the track, I don't know. If you're just joining us from around Europe, the UK, or further afield, hello. John Hindhaugh, Andrew Marriott, and Bruce Jones in the Global Broadcast Centre, in the bottom paddock, in the endurance paddock here at Spa this weekend. Really just soaking up the atmosphere, pun intended to a point. This is already turning into another classic Spa event. Just talking to Callum Lockie again there as we were coming back after grabbing some food. And just the atmosphere here is superb. Everybody, all the spectators are so knowledgeable. The cars, I was standing outside this morning and talking to some friends. Hello to Peter and Tom Fiddling. Nice to see you again after a wee while. And thank you to Team Ashworth as well for the T-shirt. The guys in the TVR, the number 73. Even just watching the cars going out on the parade laps or the fast laps, almost every minute whilst we were trying to have a conversation, it was, oh my God, look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
I've just had
the road cars.
Just had a look like that moment. There's a rear shot, and there was 3 Daytona Cobras, and you saw the cab tail at the rear, and each one always had that big number painted on the back.
Yeah.
For me, it's sort of iconic of those cars, and you know, that Ford came and whacked Ferrari in the Manufacturers' Championship because, what was it? Mr. Ferrari wouldn't sell the business to Ford? Or,
yeah. They'd got very close.
So we're going to beat you at your own game, which is what had happened.
Sort of do whatever it takes, and each year they realised it was going to take a little bit more until they got it right in '66. Yeah. But I mean, it was great for a film, great for books.
Don't forget Mr. Eric Broadley's part in that, and
indeed, yes.
Lola.
Yeah,
it was sort of glossed over in the film. Although I didn't dislike the film as much as I thought I was going to.
The Ford Ferrari film.
Yeah.
Oh, I really loved it. I thought it was great, and you know, the story about Ken Miles hadn't really been told, and as a Midlander originally, I kind of had that bond with him. I don't know. I thought it was a terrific film.
There's a few movies I have to go and re-watch now when I get some time back at home. Not going to be in the next few weeks because there is a plethora of sports car and endurance racing coming. We've got IMSA next weekend from the streets of Detroit.
Wow.
And then straight to Le Mans Classic, whilst it's the Dijon Classic as well. Straight to Le Mans Tester, rather, where it's the Dijon Classic for Andrew. That's also Mid-Ohio that weekend, which is a 4-hour headline race for the Michelin Pilot Challenge. Then it's Le Mans. There's also some Carrera Cup North America that weekend that we'll be covering whilst we're at Le Mans.
Busy, 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 John.
And then it's the Nürburgring 24 the week after that.
And then for some of us, it's a trio of 25 races going on to Spa-Francorchamps. I don't think it's really advised by anybody, but anyhow, and again, because GT3 is the secondary category at Le Mans, of course, that means quite a number of these drivers to do all three.
Correct.
What fun. It will be fun. It will be fun.
It will be fun, yeah.
Noticing quite a lot of light configurations on the front of these cars. Different ideas. And we got some, actually running the old French yellow that we used to have at Le Mans, didn't we, for the lower classes?
Yeah, and that was the regulation there. And people asked it. I mean, that went on till, what?
8 years ago. So.
Yeah, it was quite a long. It was quite a long time after I'd started in '89, and the reason for that was that was the law on French roads.
Yes. And
because Le Mans was run on roads, then the GT cars had to have them, the cars that were based on road cars.
Yep.
And it was only relatively recently that you didn't have to have the amber lights. So we're going green. We've had 8 minutes of racing, but now we cross the line, and Jonathan Mitchell leads through from John Minshaw and Christopher von Riet. Olivier Gallant in that Shelby Daytona coupe, sorry. Have the accent on it.
And we know that the Bram Bontrup car, the Dutch driver, sorry, he was a winner, remember, at Barcelona.
Yes, he was.
So he's a guy to watch for.
Some good drivers in this, drivers that perhaps, if you're not au fait at a spin, going up the hill for the first time, I think it's at the 30...
It's the Minshaw car.
It is the Minshaw car.
So I started second.
I paused there because that is a very unusual thing to see.
Well, it is.
Driving on his own in that 65 E-Type.
Number 33, which is a number he's carried in several races this weekend. But again, unusual to see John go around, particularly, you think how many years he's been racing E-Types and winning in E-Types. But it just goes to show, falling light, slippery conditions, he will regather and certainly charge up the order, you can be sure of that. But this first full racing lap, rather than since the start of the race behind the safety car, who's going to be happiest to push early on? But up the front, it's very tight indeed. And if you're just joining us, this is the 60s endurance race. You're going to need a few drinks to get through this one. It's 2 hours of racing. Yep. It's largely Jaguar E-Type, Shelby Cobra 289s and Shelby Cobra Daytona coupes at the front of the field. And it's very, very tight indeed at the front. The first three cars covered by John, about half a second as they leave the speakers corner.
And a bit of a surprise with the German Christoph van Riet coming up into second place.
Well, he knows this circuit very, very well indeed.
Yeah.
And on the Peter Auto Classic site, there's some wonderful onboard footage of him going around the circuit in a Cobra.
But Belgian, isn't he?
He's Belgian. He's Belgian. Yeah. But also, he sort of hums and whistles as he gets happy around the circuit. It is fabulous. It's sort of when's a sort of slower part, like the bus stop, he'll have a little. He'll say a few words and then carry on. Great footage.
The first non-Jaguar or Cobra is down in 17th position. It's the leader in GT2, and that's the Alexi Grafenwedel car, the Lotus Elan. That's a Series 1 car from 1965. Second in that class is a 26R from 65, Ivan Petev Ivanov. And third in that class, another 26R Elan, is Olivier Meurens in the 1-4-6. This is one, as Bruce said, to settle back, get yourself some snacks and your favourite beverage. Watch this one develop. Start of the race, we started behind the safety car, so it was line astern single file, and all looked well. In fact, looked like John Minshaw had a better run. Oh, he lost that going into Eau Rouge, just slightly offline as he went into the left-hander before the compression at the bottom of the hill.
That is unusual.
That is very unusual.
I think the paint got him as well, didn't it?
Yeah, he was already sliding and going off to the left and got onto the red and yellow curbing there. Olivier Gallant goes through. Christophe Van Riet then in second. Jonathan Mitchell leads the GT4 category in that 1965 3.8 Jaguar. And it's Bram Brontup and Erwin France and James Thorpe and Maxime Gunat and John Minshaw's recovered to 8th position. Side by side, Andrew.
Absolutely. Coming through the murk. And there's the number 6 Cobra going well.
Olivier Gallant, he's already had a pretty good result in the Group C.
Had a win. And now he knows the track conditions, presumably, but he's driving supremely well here today. And but there's Mitchell in that Jag. He's hanging on. It's looking straight at the back of that Cobra with the great big number on the back that I just mentioned a moment ago.
James Thorpe in the lighter coloured Jaguar, the number 43 there, silver or silver grey, also trying to make moves through the field. Now, unlike the touring cars that we're going to see later, I am going to posit that all of these cars have got non-1965 headlamp bulbs in.
As we are dazzled as they come towards the camera up at Les Combes, precisely so. Can I just go back to the Lotus Elan? We just touched on that. We said it was the highest non-ranked Cobra. It's now in 16th place, Cobra E-Type, so it's lost one position. But I found a fabulous quote from Jackie Stewart about, obviously he raced in Elan at one point. He described the original car, the road car, get this, the most difficult little sod of a car I've ever driven, because he said it was vague, it was a little too soft, but then wasn't really the works that developed the Lotus Elan to go racing. It was Ian Walker, Sean Walker's father, was a large proponent. The Checkered Flag garage also pitched in, but it took a while, and that became the 26R. But, you know, you automatically think of the Lotus Elan, the initial one, as just the most wonderful handling car. But, of course, Jackie was appraising it from a rather higher standard than any us would have done.
They did do a few different body shapes.
Yeah, you had the sort of coupe version.
That golden car, wasn't it, that Sean Walker owned, I believe, run a lot of races in.
I'm going to throw in a possibly unpopular opinion here, but in terms of aesthetics, I always liked the +2 car.
I agree.
I think that the proportions just worked better.
And another thing, I always wanted a Lotus Elan Sprint because Jim Clark had one.
Of course.
And I went and sat in one once and realised I didn't fit. Because, of course, Colin Chapman wasn't tall of stature at all, so he made them around his own body shape. Maybe that's why I have a TVR, because Peter Wheeler of TVR was 6'5".
Well, I as many people know, I worked for Ray Mallock at RML, and every race car that they were involved in, Ray had to be able to fit in it because he wanted to have a go of it, and so that became the norm. So even the Celine, told people could get in and out of it, which was good enough for Terry Borchella and the Asemco car. Right, that is the number 77 Cobra in the kitty litter, I'm afraid. That's the Robin Greenhoff, the Swiss driver, in the 289.
Well, that was the one he's sharing with Eric van der Poel.
Yeah,
so
that
was Van der Poel who started that, was it not?
Scrolling down the order.
I'm not sure. That's the one that had a camera in. We saw a couple of
so was that
Robin appears to be at the wheel of that, and he's deep in the gravel. But actually, the tail isn't sitting down too much.
The public boys are going to be trying to give it a go.
Straight the front wheels.
Or even try and come out backwards. That's another trick.
Yeah, make it a front wheel drive car.
That's super frustrating. You've got 2 hours of racing.
And it's going to be
fantastic of circuits in a field of, I'm just going to say it again, 56 cars. We lost the Bizzarini of Loris Hazeman's early on. Was that Liam? Of course, they've got two Hazemans aboard.
Full course yellow coming, gentlemen, unsurprisingly. Now, a full course yellow is, if you like, a virtual safety car or code 60 in some other championships. This, without having to bring a safety car out with the associated potential problems that may bring, although this early in the race, it would be relatively easy to pick up the leader, but the full course yellow is now out. This being a Formula 1 Grade 1 circuit. The light boards as well as the... Oh, and a spin under full course yellow. That is the number 3, the very interestingly coloured green and white. Now that is the Daytona Coupe as well. Armand Mille and Yves Shamama.
I mean, no, Shamama's quick. We're going to see him in a later race tomorrow where he's on the pole. And Armand Mille is the son of Richard Mille, the famous Swiss watchmaker who's the sponsor of Ferrari.
Oh, that was a nasty one. That got away from him in the braking area at Le Combe, and that might have been left rear wheel just on the paint.
I think so.
As he... no, he's decided...
He bailed out of that quickly.
Yeah.
Well, out, because you're absolutely in line of fire. You're dead ahead as the field comes up the rise to Le Combe, the nose of the green and white Cobra Daytona Coupe facing the onward traffic.
It's a horrible feeling.
Oh, ghastly. I mean, he's not in the track, but the reason he's gone off is possibly why someone else could go off as well.
Yeah.
So it does appear the rain has eased somewhat. It became sort of
Bruce Jones,
drizzle.
The voice of optimism this weekend.
John, I've done so many races at the Nürburgring over the years in the long distance races. You just have to look at the degrees of rain.
Good point.
And if you feel it's getting, there is rather drier weather coming.
Incredibly, the air temperature has gone up a degree, 2 degrees actually. It's now 10 Celsius. It's only 8 Celsius this afternoon. The track temperature has been pretty solidly around 12 Celsius, which is too cold, actually.
Yeah.
It's
well,
really cold.
This is what the drivers were pointing out yesterday. They said the weather was fabulous yesterday, but it wasn't that warm. And definitely getting heat into tyres is always an issue historically.
Yeah, and that was when the track temperature was 18 or 19 Celsius. I mean, it isn't going to get any warmer from here. There's no more sunshine from now on.
There's a snatch vehicle coming. There's a lovely shot just before of the 2 different styles of Cobra running together. A very rounded original and this beautiful body that Peter Brock designed for it.
Yes, and let's remind ourselves that in 1965, there was no such thing as computer-aided design.
No.
So aerodynamics still, and the understanding of aerodynamics was still very much in its infancy, Bruce. People looked at aircraft and tried to reverse the thinking to provide downforce rather than lift, or at least not even to provide downforce, but just to smooth the air around the car.
To make them slipstreamable, basically, to make it like an airliner in a straight line. But yeah, downforce was something that people like Jim Hall were considering at that stage, and other, geniuses at Chaparral and so on and so forth. And then, of course, BRM really almost got first down to ground effects. Didn't quite manage it, but Lotus took the credit for that one. But that was the first time in Formula One. Of course, that still remains the thing that most people look at. But many, many clever ideas are not very peak. But it was sticking little bits of ribbon on cars and taking a look at them, and then sticking
wool strips. Yeah,
they used to use oil traces.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, much this they do with, it's called the brand name now. They use the brand name of Flovis.
Yeah.
But that they still use that in Formula One and FP1, I do like the fact that with all of the technology that we've got nowadays and all of the simulations, both in wind tunnel work, with those big aero rakes that you see, all the pitot tubes everywhere that measure the air pressure changes, full-sized, 50 or 60% models, and sometimes full-size one-to-one models in wind tunnels, and we're still basically spraying a paraffin-based substance on Formula One cars to see where it ends up.
There's a certain madness, but I'll just posit this little question to you. Before we had computers and understanding of airflow, we produced beautiful road cars. The irony there, you look at the supercars of today, and I really don't see anything beautiful at all. They're all about making the difference between 224 and 227 miles an hour that nobody is ever going to achieve. I might feel like an old fool here, but I think cars should be beautiful, because most of the time you are not doing too much.
And what about beautiful Formula One cars? Well, they certainly aren't that anymore.
You paint all the Formula One cars black, could you tell them apart?
Absolutely not.
Well, thank goodness.
Only Piola, the famous technical drawing.
God, sure.
Yeah, sure.
He designed the Metzario, so...
Yeah.
And the thing about that is there's 2 reasons for that. One about aerodynamic efficiencies, and the other is because the rules are so proscriptive. It's effectively a spec class, particularly with the engine regs, I once had the opportunity to look at some engine parts from the then three major manufacturers of engines, and I'm not saying that one would fit in the other, but I couldn't tell them apart.
And they all pretty well use. I was reading an article about the great Peter Stevenson yesterday. They're all using the same CAD/CAM program, except one team apparently, he said. So it comes out the same solution.
But road cars are the same, and bear in mind as we go back to still under full course yellow. Bear in mind we're talking about all of the cars that are on track now, all of the 56 cars. They were built as road cars, high performance road cars, prestige road cars, halo cars you might call them nowadays, but they were all built as road cars, and they had to have something about them that made them stand out from the opposition. And so people, Jaguars had a particular look to them, whether it was the E-types or whether it was the four-door Jaguars. So William Lyons always liked to be able to see the top of the seats over the top of the window line. Various different things, and you would say, even looking at a tiny portion of cars, you'd say, well, I know what that is. That's an Aston Martin, and that's a Jaguar. And that gave cars personalities, and it brought people to a particular look. Because there's so much computer design on cars nowadays, and safety regulations as well, I accept that too. The ability to do something massively different has really been taken away from car designers. And I love talking to car designers now for some of the more niche manufacturers, so the people like Aston Martin, for example, and their design team are great to talk to. They do really clever things with negative space to change the way the light falls on panels, to make them look like something that you couldn't probably do. And I really like that idea of how can we get around this to make our cars look distinctively different. Some of the latest Ferraris, I think, have gone right back to their design, basically go back to their design CV and start to go, well, that's obviously a Ferrari.
It has to be a distinctive thing that's a
Totally
Ferrari.
agree.
There was a little word game you can play. It's been out for about 5 years, maybe. Look, Wordle.
Yes.
Okay? I don't play that, but I was told there's one called Cardle, and they would just show you a part of a car, and you had to guess which manufacturer.
Brilliant.
But it's in cars for the last 10 years. If they did one from the 60s and 70s, as a boy who digested the Observer Book of Cars every year, I know full well that was an Austin Maxi wing mirror or whatever.
Yes.
Mind you, wouldn't have been able to tell headlights apart because everybody used the 7-inch Lucas. Everybody. And then when it went to the square ones, it was, first Hillman Avenger, HB Viva, some of the Fords all used exactly the same bits and pieces. We're back to green, by the way, gents.
Yeah. And John, they did all close up, actually, under that yellow. So they're all pretty close now, as Olivier Gallant, Olivier Gallant, proving a real hero today.
Yeah, he certainly has been quick before this year, but he's really earning his corn in these very wet conditions. And the light is, the cameras would pick it up around the circuit, but it's properly dark out there. Add in the factor of all the spray. So Christophe Van Riet in second place is getting a massive faceful of all that spray, but it's only from one car. Everybody else behind has got an extra amount of spray thrown on them, and that's Jonathan Mitchell in the leading Jaguar, who's in third place overall. Remember, he started on pole position, but just doesn't have the grunt of those Cobras. The 289 Cobra, so much more horsepower than the Jaguar, much less aerodynamic, but it's about how they're going to work their cars to the conditions as they change.
And by the way, just going back to design, if we're talking about Aston Martin, I've got to mention Marek Reichman.
Oh, yes.
Who actually, his degree was in industrial design from Middlesbrough University, although he ended up going to Royal College of Art, I think, as a student, one of the first Land Rover students there. He's also a racer. He races Clubmans, and how he folds himself into that, because he's another tall lad as well. But his influence on, I suppose, the first big project that people know him for was Aston Martin 177.
Near the front back from about third position. It's not Jonathan Mitchell, no. It's an E-type has gone around on the exit of Speaker's Corner and has got going again, but lost about 3 or 4 places. Flashing lights at the side of the circuit. I couldn't quite work out what that was. So just to tell you, the conditions are very, very difficult. The light isn't falling, it's fallen. The only light around the circuit is from these headlights, but it looks as though first handful of cars are okay, trying to work out who went for a spin, but they were very fortunate. Nobody was that close behind them, because at that point, you're going downhill, the track's wet, you need to turn to the left.
Bless you, Andrew. The number 101. Well, actually, we haven't got a 101. We haven't got a 101 because they haven't got the transponder. It's okay, there it is, just popped up. Bas Janssen in the 101 Shelby Cobra. The team at Alcamel working overtime in this race. They do have a backup system, so that car is on the timing screen. And another smart move for my money, sorry, Bruce. For Peter Auto, I work a lot with Alcamel, both in IMSA and in the World Endurance Championship and at Le Mans, and in a couple of other championships as well. And their timing solutions are superb. And I should say, you can follow along actually as well. So I should have said this earlier on today. My apologies for leaving you in the dark. I suspect many of you will have known this anyway. livetiming.alcamelsystems.com/Peter Auto Racing. If you just look up Alcamel, ALKAMEL, Peter Auto, then you will be able to see what we're saying. You get split times. There's also, if you get the page up just above the time remaining, to the left of the name of the race, there's a little 3-bar gate. If you click on that, you can get what my American colleagues call the dancing ants, which is the tracker, and the results from earlier on today as well. It's all there for you, thanks to the joys of the internet and our colleagues at Alcamel Systems.
Right, it's very, very tight at the front of the field, John. The second lap after release, and Olivier Gallant is leading by just half a second from Christophe Van Riet. It's Shelby Cobra from Shelby Cobra, then Jonathan Mitchell and the recovering John Minshaw, who had the really unusual spin, the point where they are right now, which is at the bottom of the slope at Eau Rouge before it goes up to Radion. So it's closing up at the front.
And Minshaw's just put the fastest lap of the race in of anybody, 3:16.6. 3:16.0, excuse me.
Mitchell won this race last year here, actually. Yeah.
Actually, I say that. No, that's a fastest class lap because Gallant's done a 3:13.3. Wow.
Yeah, but after this safety car, we've got the top 7 cars covered by 8.5 seconds, going down to Maxime Guina in the number 51 Shelby Cobra. So at the moment, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Shelby Cobras in the top 7, 3 Jaguars. The Jaguars are 3rd, 4th, and 5th. John Mitchell, John Minshaw, James Thorpe.
So the race was in the dry last year.
It was, yeah.
And Mitchell is 20 seconds slower.
Yeah, we got to about here last year before the rain came down in buckets.
Yeah. And
eventually, I think about 10ish, it was decided that it wasn't going to happen for the rest of the night. We came back. We had a beautiful day on Sunday. And had great racing. So, Andrew, you were telling us earlier on about Le Mans and you being dispatched to Le Mans in the mid-60s by Motoring News, and a slightly gumpy ARM went to Le Mans because it wasn't single-seaters and Formula One. So, were you then, did that make you become more aware of this type of sports car racing for these type of cars, or was it just the Le Mans and the... there wasn't a World Championship in those days, but the 1,000-kilometre races.
No, I was used to seeing cars like this race at Mallory Park and Alton Park. I was covering Cub races since I was a teenager.
Right.
So I was 16, I was writing about racing. No, the thing about going to Le Mans was there were some quite big names in it. Obviously, Jochen Rindt won that first year, and Graham Hill were there, and so on. For me, Formula One was the actual pinnacle. And I was doing Formula 2 at the time, so I was pushing to try and be the Formula 1 reporter, which subsequently happened. But I was just taken up by the whole majesty of the circuit, when people forget what a great circuit is, and the atmosphere of the whole place. I loved it then, and I love it now.
So when you were watching club racing, were you watching some of these types of cars?
E-Type, particularly a bloke called Dick Prothero was in a car like this, who won a lot of races at Mallory. And I mean, obviously, E-Type's like that. Graham Hill raced. He was one of the main drivers. John Coombs was one of the main guys. Coombs
Jaguars, he
ran them. But he ran them for Grand Prix drivers in support races, So, yeah.
Right, I just want...
but I mean,
And what else was racing that we haven't got here? we see the Shelbys and the Jaguars a go-go, because those are the, you know, those are the glory cars. They tune very well, they run well nowadays. But what were the oddities that were running with them?
We never had as many as this.
No.
So, you know, so there was lots of classes. So there would be a Lance, and then there'd be another class with lots of little cars like the GSM Delta. Everybody remember that? The Divas, the Turners, the Sprites, nearly all with 1 litre engines in. And I actually, very early on, I was helping run a Turner in that class. I remember going to Silverstone, and here's a little Turner going round, and every about 5 laps, it was lapped by a GTO driven by Graham Hill, you know.
Yeah. There were always multi-class racing then.
Multi-class racing, yeah.
See, I love that. You can only learn multi-class, Bruce, by driving and watching multi-class. I think you only learn that 3D thinking of multi-class racing if you're doing it.
It becomes 4D thinking when you're in conditions like this.
Oh, certainly
dark, rainy, tricky circuit. I just want to wave the flag. We talked already about the top car that wasn't a Shelby Cobra or a Jaguar E-Type, and it was 15th. It fell down the order a bit, but Alexis Graf von Wedel, 11th overall at the moment, nimble, and he's balancing it so well, way down in the horsepower stakes. But what he has, he can put down, because we were talking earlier about the 26R Lotus Elan. It became stiff enough to be nimble and go where the drivers wanted to go. The AC Cobra, the Shelby Cobra, has always been a rather harder car to drive, and number 76, one of the Cobras, just got its nose pointing the wall, and that's also the wall on the inside. And then
we've all done that.
Dinked away.
Am I right that it's got some strange rear suspension system with a leaf spring or something?
On the Cobra?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a very strange setup, I know that. Or maybe it's the front, there's a leaf spring across the front or something like that. Pit lane.
Jaguar number
83,
the ubiquitous red E-Type 3.8. That's Pascal Rapaling's car from 1963. I talked with Carroll Shelby some years ago on Radio Le Mans, and I found the tape the other day. He and Phil Hill came into the studio, and I must actually, it's on cassette tape, and I must actually get it digitized. He was talking about the development of the Cobra, and I'm guessing it was probably around about maybe 92, so that would have been an anniversary of Phil Hill winning the race, of course, because he won it in 62, which was I think the last front engine car to win. Yes, it would have been. And Carroll Shelby was talking about the development of the Cobra and how they had to change things as tyre technology changed, and Firestone in particular, who were doing the tyres. Obviously, cross-ply tyres in those days, but the wheels got wider, so the bodywork had to go over the wheels, and they got wider and wider. And Phil Hill was talking about driving them in the Mille Miglia on public roads, and they were nigh on undrivable on public roads because the public roads weren't smooth enough, and they were going from rut to rut.
Yeah, and your contact patch wasn't what was required. I think it was about 92. Was that around the time of the Autosport International show, do you think? Because I had to host a dinner, you know, it was thrown to me. And Carroll Shelby had endless heart problems.
Yes.
That's why he used to race with a nitroglycerine.
Yeah. Well, in fact, he gave me a penknife with the Cobra, which was part of the
Adam Brooks heart plant.
He started a foundation, didn't he?
And he came over, and that dinner, I just talk about a cast of stars. You mentioned John Coombs. He was there. Tony Brooks was there. Roy Salvadori was there.
I love
Tony Brooks was there. Nigel Roebuck, Formula One writer, was there, and Carroll Shelby. But the real tennis match, I will lob a big story your way, you'll go the other way, was Carroll to Roy, with the ever-polite Tony Brooks trying to sort of administer and referee and umpire. It was epic. I wish that I have lost that tape.
No.
But, you know, frankly, you didn't know where to point your recorder because the stories were coming from all angles. But they raced in just phenomenal times. And Carroll Shelby, always a twinkle in his eye as he told a story.
He loved it, didn't he?
He did.
Chicken
when
farmer.
He won Le Mans for Aston Martin in 1959. I think the bit he enjoyed most of all after the race, when they drove the car back up the pit lane, was grabbing David Brown of Aston Martin, who changed into a suit for the celebrations, and putting him alongside him in the car, knowing full well oil was slopping around, and his very smart summer suit was never going to be the same again.
Well, we've got a Lotus deciding to take the old circuit there, and heading off down towards Burnville.
That's the Stephen Bond Cliff Gray car, number 85, but if there's an escape road, you've got a problem, you use it. And again, trying to get the braking done. Of course, the original circuit, as you said, John, crested the hill, then arced to the left, and then that long right-hander. If ever you get to Spa-Francorchamps, You're doing well,
drive it.
but you're doing far, far better. Oh dear, the Morgan SLR is off the gravel on the exit of that source.
Callum's not going to get a run unless they can drag it out of there.
It'll be dragged
Simon
out
Arabi Gann, who's running 4th in class at the time in the GT3 class, so going very well indeed. And this was a car that somehow, they said they've done something to it this weekend, and it's just in the dry, admittedly, a whole lot faster. But the conditions are such that at any point, any of these drivers could just have a little bit of a twitch, and it becomes a much, much bigger one.
And that's a full course yellow, so that's going to give them about 5 minutes to get that car out of there without it losing a lap, depending on where the leaders are. You'll notice that had a British registration number, 3 numbers and 3 letters. That changed in 1961 to have a letter suffix. So you had ABR 123A.
My Mini was WCH 852.
So that was a pre-61, well, 61 car.
I did manage to roll it. Well, actually, somersaulted it.
Excellent.
My mother wasn't pleased.
No.
Just talking about Le Mans and the Magic again, as we were. One of the things that I witnessed that you guys, I'm not sure about Bruce, was the Le Mans start.
Yes.
And it was extraordinary because the place went completely silent. And you could hear their feet when they started to run. You could hear that noise of their feet on the tarmac, and then they jumped into the cars.
So the last year that they did the run across the track, Jackie Hicks didn't run. He walked and bolted himself in and started off pretty much dead last. And the next year they still lined up in echelon, but with the drivers in the car.
Yes.
But wasn't there an accident on? There had been an accident the previous year that someone had lost their life. Yes.
That was a huge accident.
Fatal accident.
Yes.
In a 917,
Yeah. And
he nearly completed the lap as well. He was around, wasn't he, Maison Blanche, where
but he wasn't belted in properly, was he?
No. And it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, Jackie Hicks made that. He's not given enough credit for that. Everybody remembers he's 5 wins, and Mr. Le Mans, rightly so. He was at the opening of the WRT, the W Racing Team, new premises, a couple of weeks ago that I was at, and still looks as sprightly as ever. Still with a twinkle in his eye.
Lucky genes.
For every pretty lady that was there, fantastic. He's just brilliant. And he picked up the microphone to have a chat, and he talked about things that we've been talking about here, about the people, the passion, the enthusiasm, and all the technology in the world means nothing without the people. And you could have heard, there was probably a couple of 100 people there, and you could have heard a pin drop. You were hearing people breathing. There's another car.
No, that's SLR, but up at La Source, they've got it sort of towards the back of the gravel, but it's pointing. The front is pointing towards the black stuff, the track. That could be quite good news.
I really think that Jackie Hicks should be given more credit, because he, along with Sir Jackie Stewart, were people who were voices in the wilderness for safety in those days.
And I still think they were castigated.
Oh, they were.
Particularly
Jackie, particularly, yeah.
But it was here, or more to the point, in the valley next door, that Jackie Stewart found himself dangling upside down in a car with fuel streaming over him, and thereafter he said, I will always have a spanner in the car to remove the steering wheel. He was trapped by that.
Or quick release steering wheels in those days.
That does focus the mind somewhat. He was thinking 3, 2, 1, boom. No, the boom didn't come.
How come we've not got a straight or a virage, I nearly said that, a corner named after Sir Jackie in the UK? There's
not a corner good enough.
Okay.
Well
That's
done.
my suggestion. That's quite politically correct, is it?
I like that.
It's because I think,
there's a grandstand at Watkins Glen named after him.
I tell you what, there probably is one named after him at Albert Park Circuit in Australia. They named their corners by the stands around them. So it was the Champions and the Alan Joneses, but Jackie's surely worth a shout.
And doing great work as well for Racing for Dementia. Lady Helen, sadly, suffering from dementia, and Jackie throwing all of his weight behind that, and that is a tremendous cause for. And
he has made a prodigious difference, not just as a different voice for it. It comes from a different angle, but he's brought a lot of people who work in research that he's taken to Formula One teams. He's just trying to find ways to advance their rate of discovery as they search for the cure that so many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions around the world will be seeking. But he is making a difference, and as ever with Jackie, he throws himself in wholeheartedly.
I don't think we've had a mention yet from the man in ninth place, a British driver, Lee Mole, who's
he's raced
a
TVR racer.
Yeah, but raced a lot of classic Team Lotus cars since then. I think was he involved in the British Touring Car Championship as well. But Lee's having a good run in that number, is it 190 or 180 that car?
180.
180, yeah. So.
Again, that's another, the Jaguar in this field.
And we are back to green.
But he's sharing that car with Phil Keane.
That should be all right then.
Yeah.
Right, if you just joined us, this is
Stig number 3, was it?
Exactly, I think it's like the 60s endurance race. It's 2 hours. It started in drizzle and falling light. It's now properly dark and it's still drizzling. But good news is the Morgan SLR probably lost about a couple of laps. He's finally out of the gravel up at La Source and gets going again down the hill past the endurance pit. So maybe Callum Lockie will get to do the second half of the race.
Simon Ore began in that car, and he's actually, I think he's only 1 lap off the lead.
Okay.
He's not dead last of the runners. The Bitterani's running again. The 5300 car, that's the number 50. And that is like 9 laps down. We've also lost the number 3 Yves Shimama Daytona Coupe, and in the pits at the moment, Bart Westerman in his Porsche 2 litre from 1965, and 2 Jaguar E-types, the number 83 Pascal Rapalino and Xavi Gallant in the Jaguar.
Yeah, that's the brother of Olivier.
Yes.
So a race leader is having a better run than brother Xavier. So, right. Still full course yellow. Pit window opens in just under 3 minutes.
No, green flag.
Oh, but gone to green, sorry.
Yellow flag at turn 10.
Timing screen. Yellow flag at turn 10. Looking at a distance at a timing screen can sometimes your eyes begin to fail. But up front, it's Olivier Galland, and very, very hard on his tail, Christophe Van Riet, who's a real circuit expert. Sue Shelby Cobras absolutely on tiptoes.
And Minshaw's gone past Mitchell. So the battle of the E-types, yes.
So that is third, and that was actually the lead in GT4 as well, Andrew.
Yeah.
Third overall in the lead in GT4, and Van Riet has gone to the lead. Gallant down to second. Now, was that traffic influenced? But the Shelby Cobra, the 289, number 55, now in the lead of the motor race, and that is the GT5 battle. So 2 pairs of similar cars, actually identical cars in terms of the 2 Jaguars, but the Shelby Cobra at 289 versus the Daytona Coupe, battling for the GT5 in the overall lead, and John Minshaw and Jonathan Mitchell in the 2 Jaguar E-types, both the 3.8s, straight 6 of course, from 1965.
And again, just going back to the best place, Lotus Elan, Alexis Graf von Wedel is now up into 7th place overall. He advances some more. He's just ahead of Lee Mole, actually about 5 seconds clear, so he's stretching his way.
But we have gone full course yellow again, and I can't tell you why. You didn't get a note of somebody falling off the track there. Gives us an opportunity to welcome you in this Saturday evening, just coming up to 8 o'clock in the UK. It's coming up to 9 Central European summertime, or wherever you are in the world. The beauty of this international coverage is that you could be joining us from everywhere, anywhere. Take us with you if you so desire. I'm delighted to have you on board, and we'll be doing it again tomorrow from 9:30 local time here in the Ardennes.
The yellow flag is someone who's gone off at Fagnes. Fagnes in or Fagnes out. The yellow flags are down there. Probably one of the easiest corners on the circuit to get wrong, I always feel, when I go around it, because you arrive, you always carry too much speed. You have to carry less speed than you can imagine. But again, great flow on this circuit. But flow at the moment is actually just the flow of the water down from the middle of the crown of the circuit to the edge.
And it's the James Thorpe and Phil Quaife Jaguar E-Type, the lighter coloured 43 car, which was running well at one stage. So I'm not sure if that is a technical problem or whether there was some traffic involved. But that car will be being recovered and pointed back in the right direction. Code 60, I was going to say, full course yellow. Again, think of this as a virtual safety car, as what it would be called in other forms of racing. And basically, everyone slows down to either 60 or 80 kilometres an hour, depending on the series and the cars involved. And There's no overtaking, of course, unless there's a stricken car. And in theory, nobody should lose and nobody should gain. The key thing here, and I'm pretty certain that none of these cars have got car to pits radio, the key thing here is having your wits about you for when the full course yellow is removed. It'll be counted down by race control to the marshal's post so that they all pull in the flags, and there'll be somebody standing behind the two marshals who've got the FCY board and the slowly waved or held stationary yellow, but then behind them there'll be somebody with a green. And the ideal is that all around the track at exactly the same point, the board and the flag are withdrawn and the green flag goes out at the same time. Now in practice, that is not going to be the exact same instance, but the other thing is you have got to be so on the money and ready to go. And it's not as if you're getting a countdown from your team, say in the World Endurance Championship or the GT3s or in SRO that'll be here for the CrowdStrike 24 hours in the end of June. Then you'll have your team engineer counting you down, end of full course yellow in, and they will count you down. And even if you can't see a flag or a board, when he says 0, you put your foot down, because if you don't, you'll lose positions.
Yeah, and in among all of that, it's also how late do you leave your pit stop? Is it going to stay full course yellow? How long is that
it's just
going to take? Can you get in? And already 10 drivers are under investigation for pit stop infringements, and a good half dozen, no, in fact, pretty much 10 of them have already picked up penalties.
Oh my goodness me.
I mean, it's hard enough out there in these weather conditions. The light, darker and darker, but there's so many things over which to trip, but we're still waiting for a lot of the front runners to make their stops, of course. But Christophe Van Riet, he worked really hard to hunt down Olivier Galland and managed to make the move. There was a little bit of traffic. He managed to use it to good effect around Les Combes. But again, you know, sometimes fortune favours the brave and sometimes it makes you look an awful fool. But you do have to cut in these conditions. Other drivers a fair degree of margin.
Now, we are having to refuel these cars for this, and I now see on the screen there is fuel pump is free. So do I presume, like when we had Creventic here a few months ago, that the fueling is being done outside of the pit lane? Now in Creventic they used the endurance pit lane, and then at the end of the endurance pit lane you turned left, went into a fuel station, and then doubled back around, and then went out of the endurance pit lane, out through effectively alongside the track, and rejoined just over from Radion.
So many things to think about.
I did not ask that question earlier because I did not think it would be pertinent.
Pit window is open. Closes is a nice generous pit window. It closes at 26.5 minutes, but over, around and around, but pointing the right way at the end of it. The number 5 AC Cobra going for a real whipper there, and that's Alexis de Beaumont, who's driven well already today. He was out in the Gentleman's Challenge.
Talking of an Alexis, obviously Van Wedel, his first name is Alexis. He's driving with his brother. He's called Lando.
I thought that would make your ears prick up when we work you down the list. Or Lando for long, presumably.
Yeah, presumably.
The number 5 Cobra, we mentioned Alexis de Beaumont, unfortunately sitting just in the gravel.
I think he might put that out.
But I was about to say not sitting low in the gravel.
It's not.
And it's up at Les Combes, but it's...
I detect a slight jauntiness in the angle of the left rear wheel.
Jaunty is a word.
It's got a bit of lock on.
No, the rear wheel, Andrew, looks to be slightly closer.
Well, he doesn't seem to be trying to fire it up, does he?
Now, does it get a clout as he goes over the curb? Possibly.
Still turning there.
No, it's still turning. It just seems to be... I think it's just an optical illusion with the colour of the wheel. We will, I'm pretty certain, go back to full course yellow here.
Right, bear in mind a handful of cars, about 3 of the in the top 15 had come in. The pit window had opened, they have come in.
Yeah.
Frederick Wakeman in his Shelby Cobra, Bram Bontrub, Maxime Grenat, all in the Cobras had come in.
And also Mark Drain, one of the Lotus 26.
Yes.
Yeah. Cesare lands, so that could be a master stroke, but it depends how long.
And
this
here's the
period
full
of full
course yellow.
lasts.
Here comes the full course yellow in 20 seconds. Well, obviously the pit is open. You lose. Well, now, I was going to say, do you lose less time doing your pit stop under full course yellow? But in the supplementary regs, does it extend if it's a full course yellow? And that,
good question, yeah.
And that I don't know.
I think you'd have to.
Weighty tool.
Yeah.
Full course yellow is now out. Mark Drain got in about 30 seconds before full course yellow was called, and so did about another 30 seconds before that.
I think Nicholas Ditting got in, and Alexis von Graaf in that Lotus Land class leading car, leading GT2.
Jerome Puig as well.
Of course, we got Nigel Greensall to get in a Spears car, but I wonder if they're going to make 2 pit stops. Obviously,
for fuel, maybe.
Yeah, but obviously Greensall can't get in the car yet because he's got to do over half. So I just wonder if he'll do a medium stint of just about an hour, just under an hour, and then put Spears will go back in the car. Be interested to see. It's up to 8th now. Could be still competitive by the end, that car.
So full course yellow freezes the field. Now, in some ways, if you've got your less confident driver in here at this point, and some of your competitors have decided to put their gun driver in at the beginning, then this is good news, because everybody's driving at the same speed. I can drive at the same speed as Olivier Galland or Christophe Fonries here because it's under full course yellow. So you're not losing, you're not gaining anything, but neither are you losing anything. And we seem to have had a slew of drivers. No, still just those 3 in the top 10. For a moment there, I thought I saw the pit lane marker against. We can't see the pit lane in here. We're in the endurance paddock area in our spacious Global Broadcast Centre this weekend.
We have a window, but we can't quite see.
We can see
we can see our own reflections, effectively.
Yes.
It's so dark outside.
We can see the Parc Fermé. Big weekend of motorsport.
The biggest weekend of the year, always, this one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. There's so much going on.
One of the biggest classic weekends. Obviously, the biggest race in America. And
the Monaco Grand Prix.
And the Monaco Grand Prix.
And the qualifiers at the Nürburgring, which are just coming to an end in half an hour's time. There's another race there tomorrow. Top qualifying at 9:30 European time. And then another 4-hour race. The Misano 12 hours will be.
I just got in the pits then.
Hello to those of you who are perhaps joining us from watching that today. Kyle Tilley will be dashing straight from that, getting on a plane and getting here, or getting in a car rather than getting here this evening. Now, this is the start of the dash for the pits now.
Well, Gallant just went in, I think.
Well, let's have our timing not reflecting that. So let's see if it was further down the field.
Yeah, it might have been. Well, certainly one of the lead cars dived in.
Now, there's a whole bunch of cars coming from the mid-pack and on down. So Olivier Beato, Olivier Meurens, Damien Kohler, Luc-Pierre Verquin, all diving into the pit lane. The leader at the moment is just coming up to Eau Rouge, or coming down to Eau Rouge, I should say.
Yeah, you're right, John, the timing not showing Gallant in.
Yeah,
I caught it out of the corner of my eye, so.
I'm pretty certain that he's still leading the field. Let me just get the...
Yeah, I think it was another of the Shelby Cobra Daytona coupes. Certainly it was that body shape, but again getting harder and harder as the light dwindles to pick them out. And you do have to sort of tip your hat to the camera crews out around the circuit as they're trying to pick out which of the headlights, particularly when they're about to do some lapping, are the ones they need to get their focus onto. It's cool, it's wet, it's dark. Hey, but it's Spa-Francorchamps. great meeting, but I really do think they do a phenomenal job when it gets dark.
Yeah, agreed that. 60th Classic race coming up to half distance. And we're waiting for this clearance. No, we've gone back green. So we have gone back green.
Right, and anybody caught sitting in the pits is now suffering. If they'd come in the lap before, they would have found an advantage. But a lot of our front runners have not come in, including those 2 Shelby Cobras at the front of the field. Christophe Van Riet and then the Daytona Coupe version of longtime leader Olivier Galland. But just another second and a half further back come the best place of the Jaguar E-types. John Minshaw, who overtook Jonathan Mitchell not so long ago. They're 3rd and 4th.
Drivers, the team's been reminded to tell their drivers that they must unfasten their safety belts when they are being refueled. So they are using the fuel station. So, and there's the reason for that. That sounds a little bit clumsy, but the reason for that is it means there's no fueling in the pit lane. That means the teams don't have to wear fireproofs. It cuts down on a lot of costs. Of course, anybody who's doing the fueling is fine. Also means people can wear shorts in the pit lane and T-shirts or hoodies or whatever.
That's interesting. That 56 car, that's Phil and Sterling Molachek, who bought that car from America. Huge. The family's got a big collection of Fords, actually. The Molachek family have collected Fords for a long time.
Yeah, classic colours with the red and white racing stripe over the middle of the car.
I think Phil is the dad, I think, and he's having his shoes wiped.
Dried off, yeah.
And also just body folded, because when you get the door opening on a Cobra Daytona Coupe, and indeed a regular Shelby Cobra, there's not a lot of door to get in between.
That's
if you're longer of frame, you've got to almost have an extra joint.
So that's a former Joe Schlesser car.
A replica.
Écurie Ford France with André Simons, the other driver. But, you know, again, it wasn't just American teams running these cars at Le Mans. You looked around to see what you could do.
There's a car that Carl Jones had raced.
Kevin Jones.
Kevin Jones.
Kevin Jones joined Alexis de Beaumont. I think it was Alexis at the wheel when it had its problem. Number 27 E-Type is in as well. That's Didier Robin and Arnold Robin, who do a lot of racing. And the third name is Maxime Robin, who race a lot of GT3s these days.
Yeah.
Family from Le Mans.
Yes, so was
motive sort of picture there in the gloom, and
it was Chuck Dressing, our longtime colleague from the US and on Radio Le Mans, who said of Le Mans in those early mornings where it was slightly misty that it was maniacs driving at 250 miles an hour through an impressionist painting.
Yeah, beautiful.
I always thought that was beautiful imagery that Charles conjured up, and it's quite similar to that now. We are verging on art in terms of the pictures that we're seeing now, the mist and the water vapor from the tyres, which are very good at throwing up spray. That's what they're meant to do, but that's hanging in the air and just softening the focus slightly.
I'd be interested to see some of there's quite a lot of British photographers here, aren't there, this weekend?
A lot.
And I'm interested to see some of their best works, because I think we could have some very beautiful
But some of them, we're not talking half light, we're not even talking quarter light here, but the shot we've just been treated to see of an Elan, and it separated it for the entirety of the meeting. It was the mechanics, it was the driver, and the driver who was getting on board.
Yeah.
Nobody else. And just the light was picked out on the driver's helmet. It really was a vignette, but only the very best photographers and camera crews picked those out, and I really do applaud them for it.
Our camera operators that work in motorsport are, I think, about the best in any sport, and they all love it. And it doesn't matter whether it's the guys from NASCAR Productions that we'll be talking about in the rest of the IMSA season, or when we get to Le Mans for the next major race, back for the Peter Auto Classic at Dijon-Prenois, which we've been talking about. Incredibly, dear viewer, my colleague here, Bruce Jones, has never seen motor racing at Dijon.
Well, he's going
I've
to
seen
enjoy
it, just not in the flesh.
Not on the telly, yeah. But
Sometimes circuits just escape you. And I was saying to you the other day that Paul Ricard, I should have been there many times, never had until about 6 years ago. That first year I went 3 times.
Yes.
But, you know, it just depends what championships you're covering, or if you're stuck behind the editor's desk, as I was at Autosport, you didn't get out as much as you wanted. But that's long, long behind me. But I love going to circuits I haven't been to before.
Moved up to 4th place now, France. I think 2 brothers in that car. And
number 70.
He's been a front runner of this series in the past. So he's definitely been on the podium. So, and you notice the Spears Greenswell car now is 5th. And Nigel's not in it yet.
So we're going to have a couple of guests coming through. We'll do them one at a time. Hello, gents. How are we? We'll try and get you in here, spread some of the love. So just under halfway through this one, Bruce, and whilst we get our guests settled, you can do a little bit of a rundown.
So Olivier Galland leading the way, but we're waiting for a host of runners to come in and make their pit stops. The pit window's still got plenty of time open. We've still got 13, 14 minutes remaining, but do not slip up. Do not stay out too long. Do not get caught by another full course yellow and find your laps taking longer than you require to get round to the pit entrance. But right, Olivier Galland leading in his Shelby Cobra. This is the Cobra Daytona Coupe, the number 6 that was the leader. It was overtaken not so long ago. The car that caught and passed him, Christophe Van Riet, has just pitted, as has Lee Mole in his Jaguar E-Type. So now we've got the Jaguar E-Types of John Minshaw and Jonathan Mitchell up to 2nd and 3rd positions. They're running in a different class to the front runner, Olivier Galland, leading the race GT5, but then the GT4 class is for the 2nd and 3rd place car. Erwin France picking his way up the order, and John Spires, who'll be coming in at some point. He's already done a pit stop. We've got to wait for Nigel Greenswell to take over the number 126 Jaguar E-Type. And still, we've got a Lotus in the top 10, but it's now number 124, 8th place overall. And that is even Peter Ivanov, who's sharing with Ed Morris. So again, we've got a mixture, but a lot of the runners have got into the top 10 because they have not pitted. But basically, it still remains the battle between the AC Cobras, the Shelby Cobras, and the Jaguar E-Types. But how it crumbles and how the second driver in these pairings can perform, because they're going out and it's entirely dark, slightly wet.
Robert Westerman joins us. How are you, sir?
Thank you for having me. Doing on one side okay, other one we just dropped out of the race, unfortunately.
Oh no!
Yeah, my brother was driving, and I think a gear linkage went wrong.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
Because he had to start right down at the back of the order. Why was that?
I actually don't know.
Oh, okay. Just to give him a challenge, maybe.
No, we did okay in the qualifying, but it was dry, and then we're heavily underpowered with a 2-liter. But luckily it was wet, so he went right up the order. He went from 59 or 56 to 37, and then I just saw him tumbling down. I checked the live stream we have in the car, and he was unfortunately out.
That is the one thing on that car that everybody tells me is, you know, shifting it when you're going in a straight line. The gear linkage can be a bit weird,
especially in the wet. If you're heavy on the braking and the car is a little bit loose, and then it's so easy to miss the gear, and then it tries to go into 2 gears at once, and that'll mess something up.
Was this the same car that was running in the 2-liter Cup?
Yes,
it's already one race in the Porsche 2-liter Cup.
Yeah,
great field of cars.
It was
and he went well as well.
Yeah, we won we won the gentleman class, and we were 3rd overall. We didn't expect it in our debut. It was the first time here.
Tell me why you chose to come into that category, and indeed into the Peter Auto Classic family, and welcome to the family.
Well, thank you, and I think family is the word we're going for, because it was our father's car. So I'm driving with my brother. He was racing this car late 80s, early 90s. So
really? Great.
Yeah, so we have memories of being here in Spa, early 90s, with him racing this car at 6 hours and other races.
Wow, that is sheer quality. Is it in the same spec as it was when your dad was racing it?
No.
I was going to say it.
He was doing 2.5 liters with Webers, and he was going really quick. So, and we talked to James Turner from we've known him for quite some time now, and he said, "Well, you got to do 2-liter Cup.
Yeah,
you got to do it."
So back down to 2-liter with a 6-cylinder engine on Solexes.
Yep.
Instead, you run the Aramco fuel.
Yep.
And the control tyre as well, the Avon control tyre.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I noticed in the dry we were way oversteer, more oversteered than the other cars, because we were running the original little coney dampers. They're like bicycle dampers, but they were perfect in the wet, because all the people with the stiff dampers they couldn't touch the curbs, and we just went and we were flying. I did not expect the result we had.
So you haven't had a chance to get out here in this weather. Are you happy about that or sad?
Yeah, a little bit sad, because when I see my brother flying through the order, and he might not like this, but I'm a little bit quicker, so I was thinking,
no,
yeah.
You know what? I was talking to him earlier. He said he was quicker than you.
You were talking to someone else now.
Actually, we had to be quick at the end because another pesky Dutch driver was starting to catch him at the end. Jeroen Blekemolen was coming like a rocket.
He was actually flying, yeah. We know Jeroen as well for quite some time. He's known me as a kid. And I was looking at the timing like, oh, don't you dare.
So is that the end of the weekend for you, or have you got there's nothing else for you tomorrow?
No, that's it. So tomorrow we'll be here just spectating.
Yeah, good, because it's going to be a great day tomorrow as well. Starts a little bit earlier, we'll have it for you. So, out at Dijon, next one?
Fortunately not, no. Our next race will be Le Mans.
At Le Mans Classic?
Yes.
Well, we'll see you there then.
Oh, awesome.
Have you been there before?
Nope, first time as well. And it's one of those things coming together as well. So one of the main sponsors for Le Mans is State of Art. It's a clothing brand, and that was our father's company. So and then one more thing, it's at his birthday, so he'll be looking down. Yeah,
really?
He'll be looking down at us for sure.
That's very, very cool. In terms of the experience that you guys have, you could have gone racing elsewhere. You had the car, but obviously, contemporary racing not interesting for you, or?
We've been doing some BMW Cups. Nothing too spectacular. And this was so nostalgic, and just the opportunity that was presented with this car, we had to take it.
What had the car been doing then in the intervening years? Your dad was racing it.
It went up into storage somewhere, and we had to completely strip it and do everything again.
Right.
So it was collecting dust, unfortunately.
But you still had it. That was the key thing. So you had somewhere to start.
Yep, definitely. Yeah.
Sounds good. Who did the work on the car for you?
It's Bas Auto Service. It's a small shop in the east of the Netherlands.
Right.
And he has a whole lot of experience in racing and rally service. He builds Alfa Romeos and other engines. So he dove into this, and I couldn't be happier. We hear the stories from the guys from Tat Hill and from Historica and they're sometimes complaining about how fragile these engines can be. We got 30 hours on the engine now and no wear at all. So, yeah.
So after every event that you did Barcelona, didn't you?
No,
you didn't do Barcelona. So this is the first weekend.
Yeah.
You haven't. So you've done a bit of testing, obviously.
Yeah, a month ago we were here. Yeah.
And so what? Yeah, you have a look down the plugs. You do a little bore scope. Have a look down there.
No, not
haven't even bothered doing that.
No, we had to change the rear seal, main seal. It was leaking a bit, so we swapped that out. Did an oil change pretty much, and that's it.
Do you feel that you'll stay at this level, or do you fancy doing a bit more with other types of cars? I suppose the draw of your dad's car is very, very strong.
And it's so much fun. If yesterday during qualifying, I had the lap of my life. I knocked 2 seconds off my personal best here. Everything stuck. It was the last lap of the qualifying session. I was screaming like a little kid coming over the finish, and seeing that lap timer do a 3:02. It was just
3:02 is pretty impressive in a sub 200 horsepower car around here.
Yeah. Well, the quick guys were doing 3 flat, but for our first time out here, I was over the moon.
I think they'd better look out, hadn't they?
Well, I was going to say,
are here.
how user-friendly is that short wheelbase 2-litre car?
It's more friendly than you might think. If you look at the onboard, it looks wild. You steer right in the left corner and left in the right corner. But it's actually pretty forgiving. The car tells you really well what it wants to do, and if you steer in and the back comes out, you just floor it and it'll stay there. It doesn't go further. And it's so satisfying driving these cars quick.
And nothing's happening too fast for you, so it's not... No. Everybody talks about Porsches. I drive Porsches on the rear-ended Porsches on the roads, and everybody says, "Oh, but you can't push on in that because it'll just snap me." And that's not my experience at all. Now it's a short wheelbase car, so there's a little less of it, and you get that big rear engine polar moment of inertia, as we've got one of the Cobra coupes of Podium.
Another one.
Yeah, in the darkness, but it's carried on, so no harm, no foul. We'll keep talking. But it seems like not slow motion as such, but it seems like everything's progressive. That was the word I was searching for.
Yeah, and in the wet, I never drove this car in the wet, so this morning I was a little bit anxious. Okay, what's going to happen? And it was even easier. It was it was so much fun.
So Le Mans.
Yeah.
Any more of the big races through the year?
Maybe it's I've just become a dad, so I gotta.
Congratulations.
I gotta stay at home as well a little bit.
No, you've got to take after. You've got to take after Max Verstappen. You go straight to the next motor race.
Yeah.
Then you're on iRacing.
Then you
go testing at the Nürburgring. Then to another motor race.
Yeah, exactly.
Just tell your partner that. That's all you need to say. How did you find out about Peter Auto? And I mean, obviously you had the right car, the 2-litre Cup, but you could have gone and raced that elsewhere. So
yeah, it's also we have some friends racing with a Viper as well in the Le Mans series or in the Endurance Legends.
Yeah.
So they told us about Peter Auto. I've looked at it for years on the live streams and just the amount of ridiculous, insane, awesome cars that come to each event is it's breathtaking for enthusiasts like us.
I'll tell you now, savor the moment when you drive out of the Le Mans pit lane and you see the Dunlop Bridge in front of you for the first time. that is quite exceptional. I've only done it in a road car, and it is. But obviously, as you know, my life's revolved around Le Mans for a very long time, and that is something very, very special. Indeed.
We're gonna make it one hell of an experience, just camping in the middle of the track.
That's a proper way to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Bruce, what's going on the track?
Well, just having a look, one person who's making a real charge, fastest lap of the race by about 2 to 3 seconds, Olivier Hart, the number 76 Shelby Cobra. There's no surprise there. He's working up the order. We've now got John Mitchell leading the race. Yes, he started from pole, but he has not pitted.
No, he's got 3 minutes left, so he's got to come in at the end of this lap.
So he will drop down. That should put Olivier Gallon back into the lead of the race, that number 6 Cobra. Bear in mind, he's in the pits at the moment. So, in fact, the car that Christophe Van Riet was driving ought to work its way back towards the front of the field. Remember, Gallon and Van Riet had that fantastic battle, and Christophe just managed to stick his nose in front before we got around to thinking about the pit stops in the middle of this 2-hour race.
I'm right in thinking there's no car to pits radio here. So this is old-fashioned pit boards.
Yep.
Yeah. Or do you discuss, and you have a lot of the guys have a timer on the steering wheel or and you go, right, I'm going to drive for X amount of minutes.
I forgot to press it, so I was I turned it on when I saw the sign pit window open. So I figured, okay, if I press it now, I'm probably 35 minutes. So yeah, rookie mistake, I know.
That's all right, you're allowed. Thank you for being honest about that. That's brilliant. What's been the best part of this weekend so far? I mean, disappointment that you're not in this race that you wanted to drive with your brother?
It was the moment I handed over the car to my brother. I figured, I didn't know where I was. I thought maybe P10, 9, I don't know. And then the mechanics were like, yeah. Like, what? Yeah, okay, we're going out P4. It's like, P4? But it's because of the pit stops. No. All the pit stops are done. So then little nerves start to set in. I see my brother drop down one rank, and it starts to build, and he gets him back, and he's third, and it's 10 minutes left, and Jeroen Blekemolen is on the charge, and we start jumping, and he didn't know what he was driving as well. He was thinking P10 as well. So I was waiting for him at the end of the pit lane. He comes in, he thinks, okay, I did a good race, and he sees me jumping and screaming, and then he figured, well, something must have happened. So I jump in the car, I tell him P3 and P1 in class, and he loses it as well. That was such a nice moment to have.
And to stand on the podium.
Oh yeah. Class. Yeah, I'm still reeking of champagne.
That's fine. That's allowed, and that's exactly how it should be. You've had some great memories here, and you've honoured your dad and his car.
Yeah,
that's a good feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't be happier. I'm all smiles ear to ear, probably till a few more days.
Well, try and come and find us at Le Mans. It'd be nice to see how your first Le Mans I'm very envious of you driving a Porsche. Driving a Porsche at Le Mans is pretty special.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, the most successful manufacturer, going for that 20th overall win this year, all achieved since 1970, the overall wins, of course. And just incredible. A great story.
Yeah.
Proof that... What do you do in normal life away from racing?
Cars as well.
Right.
So we do everything from restoration to ceramic coating and PPF
Right.
and everything in between.
All right. And your brother works with you on that as well?
No. My brother is in the textile industry.
All right. So something completely different.
Completely different, but still a little bit in the family atmosphere.
Because of the clothing company.
Yeah. But he's more on the how you say, the sustainability side.
All right. Very cool. Well, proof that you can come into motor racing and have a really good time at a pretty high level. This is a pretty high level.
Yeah, definitely. I was feeling or waiting a little bit at the first laps, like what's going to happen. But everyone drives so well in the 2-liter Cup.
Yeah.
They're absolutely
very respectful as well.
Yes. It's fair racing, it's hard racing, but they do not shut the door at moments that you don't expect it.
Yeah.
And that's a good feeling. That gives you confidence.
Yeah, you're nodding and smiling there.
Well, I am, because just earlier when we had James Turner in here, he said, I think it was the first race he did. It was coming out of Bruxelles. He said there were 6 cars around him, or he was one of 6 cars. They were all taking different lines, and he just started laughing.
Inside the car, inside
the car. Just thinking, this is more fun than I knew I could ever have.
Yes.
Which is a good way of putting it.
Olivier Hart has just done the fastest lap of the race, a 3:08.3. That would suggest to me that despite the pitch darkness now, and it is dark, that there aren't any track lights here. This is not even like, well, where did we go? So Daytona, no, that's lit. Le Mans now has quite a lot of lighting in key places, not everywhere, but here is very, very dark indeed. And Hart at a 3:08.385. That is by far the fastest lap of any of the classes out there. The top 3 made it in before the pit lane closed by my reckoning.
Yeah, so Jonathan Mitchell will be the best place of those, but he could well be behind Olivier Hart by the time he gets his Jaguar E-Type back on the track. Abraham Bontrup started the Hart Cobra, that's car number 76. It's going to be quite tight, but John Mitchell has driven very well indeed. Doesn't have the grunt of the Cobras, but he's kept it neat, kept it tidy in really tricky conditions.
Here's a little battle for 47th position in the overall, rather than anything else. Callum Lockheed's just done the fastest lap of the Morgan SLR, the 1961 car, 3:25.9. And he is chasing Eric van der Poel in the AC Cobra on the same lap as he's about to come across the line now. He's just done a 3:25.4. And there's about 20 seconds or so between them. So 2 absolute stalwarts and giants of this type of racing, and former British GT champion. Obviously, as we mentioned, Eric van der Poel has done just about everything and knows his way around here backwards, blindfolded with one hand tied behind his back. Thank you for coming to see us.
Thank you.
I know it's a bit of a trounce down here. I'm sorry you didn't get to drive, but it's an easy fix on the car as far as you know.
It looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you'll be back.
Yeah.
And we'll see you at Le Mans.
And better have it here than at Le Mans, right?
Correct.
That's very true. I like that. That's a positive attitude. Do you feel you know more about yourself and the car now?
I'm definitely confident in whatever conditions we're going to drive at Le Mans.
That's a nice thing to know.
Yes. Nice. Watch a bit of onboard.
Yes.
Enjoy it.
Thank you.
Don't bother watching the prototypes on board. That's going to completely freak you out. Because you look at it and go, there's not a chance I'm going to be able to do that, but you won't be going that quick. What's your lap time going to be at Le Mans?
I have no clue.
5 minutes, maybe? Probably. I'd think about that.
We'll see what the Plateau 4 does. So, thank you.
Thanks for coming to see us. It's a really, really good story, Bruce, isn't it?
It's a fantastic story, because already James Turner was picking up on your brother's performance. You know, great to have people coming in, getting it, and also just the family link. So really, really good. Right, Olivier Hart continues to absolutely charge, but the big question is Jonathan Mitchell, who started from pole in his number 157 E-Type. He's sort of fortunate, John, in that he's doing both parts of the race. So he will understand what the track conditions are. And it's
the
definitely difficult for anybody going out to do the second half of this race into the darkness without the benefit of a few laps behind the safety car. The race started behind the safety car with a modicum of light for those out there. But Jonathan Mitchell, like others, it might be an advantage just doing both parts of the race, all of this 2-hour race.
Another guy really on the move is Phil Keane. Phil Keane has got into that 180 car, and he is probably the second fastest guy out there at the moment, actually.
Yeah, took over from Lee Mole, who was running, I think, about 8th place.
That's right, yeah.
Still waiting to just absolutely let you know the margin between Jonathan Mitchell, who was the last of the front runners to pit. He had been running 3rd, but advanced to the lead when the 2 Cobras ahead of him made their pit stops. But Olivier Hart got into the car, started by, and has now
Take the lead.
And he has taken the lead. Just waiting to see how far behind Jonathan Mitchell is, or will Maxime Guinard, another Shelby Cobra, move up into 2nd place. And now it's Lando Graf von Wedel, and we talked about the Lotus Elan. Remember, we picked it up in 15th position, the first of the cars that wasn't a Jaguar E-Type or a Shelby Cobra. He's now up into 4th place.
Yeah, steady rise.
They haven't had to put any fuel in. Because, as you know, I run an Elan. I help run an Elan with Andy Dawson and his son, and they definitely go 2 hours without any fueling. They don't have to.
Interesting.
Okay, that explains. I couldn't quite work out why he managed to vault about 4 runners ahead of him.
That'd be the reason.
Okay, well, it's a good reason too.
Would he have to take it slightly easy on a track like this where there's so much flat out running?
No.
No? Okay, excellent. So that's that's a great one. Also notice that Monsieur Fillon, Francois Fillon, behind the wheel now of the car that he is sharing. He and his brother have been big supporters of racing of Volker. I have a feeling that his brother, while in the time that he's been president of the ACO, has raced an LMP3 car. I'm absolutely certain he has.
That rings a bell, I must say.
I can't think where I would have seen that and commentated on it, but I'm pretty certain that is the case.
Yeah, our president also raced with David Clark in an Elan.
Yes, he did. David Clark from Georgia.
Yes.
I'd like to correct myself because Jonathan Mitchell's car is dropping down the order after that late pit stop, because he's now the Lotus of Lando Graf von Wedel is up into 3rd. John Minshaw, who's again like John Mitchell, running the entirety of this race, he's up to 4th. Janssen 5th, Olivier Gallon 6th, Fred Bouvy 7th, Jonathan Mitchell out of the pits but down in 8th.
Must have had a problem. Maybe he couldn't get on a pump or something.
I wonder, but
I know we do have.
Nobody should have done, because everybody else had pitted before him.
Maybe they had some problems with refueling.
Olivier Gallant has just been in and out of the pits again. So that was that no, that was his first stop. No, sorry. Check that.
He stopped really late.
Yes, that's kind of getting excited for no reason at all. It's not exactly a headline. Fastest laps then. Olivier Hart, who leads the race in the Shelby Cobra 289, number 76, with a 3 minutes 8. By far the fastest lap of the race so far. And that's a GT5 car.
Last lap in Sector 2, it was 4 seconds quicker in Sector 2 alone than the nearest pursuer.
I'm seeing a lot of light colours, Bruce, on the timing screen. People doing their cars fastest. Now, the more experienced and potentially the faster drivers have got in. So Ollie Bryant's just done a 3:17 in the Jaguar E-Type that he's just got into. But does that also suggest possibly that the conditions, although it's very dark out there, I don't think there's even a drying line at the moment. But I was going to say, has it stopped raining? But no, I've just seen the headlights and it's still falling.
It's still pouring. I mean, I quickly looked down the screen to see who else was picking up the pace as the second driver. Andrew Smith, so much experience in historic races. He might be down in 20th position, but he's in an Austin Healey, but he's top of his class, which is the GT3 class. We've got 5 GT categories here. He's in the sort of the middle one in terms of likely performance. But again, you know, the Scottish house builder gets in, gets on.
We did think Rob Huff would move up the field. I see he's in the pit at the moment. I presume they have a problem with that car now. which is a shame because Huffy's really good at E-type.
Yeah, but over the years, he's one of those drivers who sort of segued almost seamlessly and much faster than so many of his contemporaries into historic racing.
Well, yeah, but he started.
But he always raced an MGB. For
Yes,
years,
that's
so
how he started. Yes,
that's how he started. But don't forget that the Rob Huff E-type started down at the tail of the field. It had been qualified actually fastest, but for whatever reason was put down to the tail of the grid. It was one of the stories we were looking for. Richard Lyons making his way up the order, but clearly something untoward has delayed their progress.
Yeah.
Right, Olivier Hart, just want to pick on his lead at the moment. It's a mere 47 seconds, and he's going away with every lap from Maxime Guinard. So Cobra from Cobra, but Olivier Hart, started by Abraham Bontrup, car number 76, and it's absolutely flying.
Huffy got his break by winning the what was then Seat Cupra Cup, which was a televised sort of reality TV show that had a prize drive off the back of it, and ended up in the touring car. Was part of the British Touring Car Championship, and Dave Ward and Piers Phillips part of that. Both Wardy and Piers Phillips, both Seat guys down through the years.
So I think we're 3/4 of the way through this race now.
Yeah, half an hour to go.
Yeah,
over.
And Hart pulling away from the field. Guinard up to second place. Looking good, but not with the same pace at all.
Top 13 cars at the moment are still on the lead lap, and that is mostly GT5 and GT4 cars. The outlier is Lando Graf van Wedel in that Lotus Elan. Now, whatever else he's doing, he's still keeping up a canny little pace there, because he's fastest lap, or that car's fastest lap was a 3:20. He's lapping in a 3:23.8 last time around, a little bit of traffic. Now, he hasn't got the straight line speed. He's got a nimble car that will corner well, and I just wonder where the crossover point, if the weather gets worse or better, if it advantages or disadvantages him, and where that crossover point comes. He's got about 14 seconds on John Minshaw, who's another class leader, in 4th position. And
Minshaw will reel him in.
Yeah, well, he's 7 seconds a lap quicker. So in 2 laps, he's there.
Yeah, but
he's not fighting against. They're not fighting against him.
Must just hate that run up the Kemble Straight, just going, please give me some horsepower. Oh, here comes something. It's getting bigger. It's bigger. Oh, it's rumbled. It's past.
He gets his Kindle out and reads a chapter of War and Peace as he's going up there, doesn't he? That low cloud actually is what's causing the problems in it, sort of from Pouhon down over to the start-finish line, and then up again to probably the top of Radion. It's a little bit clearer as you come up to Les Combes, so long as you're not following a huge group of cars. And even our very sophisticated cameras on the far side of the circuit on the Pouhon out are beginning to struggle because there's just not enough light for them. They'll work and they'll amplify any light that's there. There just isn't any light.
I think it's extraordinary what we've got, actually.
I've never seen anything like this in pitch darkness.
No.
Nothing at all. And I can still discern colour.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's impressive for me, Andrew. You've worked in television for a very, very long time, and the sort of technology that we've got now is extraordinary.
And even we can see the rain sheeting down still, you know. We've got that definition despite there being so little light. Technology just coming on apace all the time.
When we first started doing the American Le Mans series, which, remember, the first Petit Le Mans was 1998, the first series was 1999, and Don Panos was buying TV time for quite a lot of the races there, and he liked the cars going into darkness, and the TV companies hated it, because when the cars were coming towards you, literally all you could see was a blur of light.
Yeah.
And things have come on. You know, that's 20 years ago. That's all we're talking about, really, 25 years ago. And the technology that's come on, and the camera technology, the switch to digital, to high definition, to ultra high definition and 4K, and the availability of that technology for us to be able to see it here at the circuit and inform our commentary, but also to beam it in real time across the world, which would have been satellite dishes and on passes and bouncers.
Yeah.
And then somebody taking it in Australia, somebody taking it in South Africa, somebody taking it in the States. And now, provided you've got some data, you could be watching this on your phone somewhere in the States at the moment.
Another extraordinary thing is, of course, the timing of scoring. I'm looking at my iPhone, I'm seeing sector times.
Yes.
Years ago, when I was reporting Grand Prix races, say there was a practice session, you had to wait 15 minutes until
the end of the session.
They pinned the times up somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, it wasn't quite like that because all the teams had, like Helen Stewart, you mentioned, she was mega on the stopwatches. So I would go.
She wouldn't just time her own.
No, they're using split-second stopwatches, and there was 4 or 5 of them were really good. So at the end, as the session was coming to the end, I'd go and speak to each of them.
Yeah.
And so I really know who was fastest.
Yeah.
But you still have to wait for it to be official. But you can start writing your story because they were usually right within fractions of a second. Except they also weren't sitting in the same places at timing.
Yeah.
Which was also being done manually, of course. Yeah. And now, if I want to look at a kart race in Australia, some kids I've never heard of, I can see their sector times on some little kart track. It is one of the most extraordinary the way that the whole digital age has changed racing. And of course, you know, these cars have got carburetors. Now all the fuel is finely monitored by a wonderful computer.
Yeah. But you know what? As soon as a bit of technology advances, you take it for granted. It's just because we sort of expect it to come. But I have done the night stint at the Spa 24 Hours, and we talked earlier about how dark it is around the circuit. And to my mind, even about half a dozen years ago, it was terrible at night.
I think
now,
I did think. You couldn't see it out. No, nothing.
To the point where, you know, I would try to get the night stints for races that we were, even if we were on radio, obviously you're relying on the TV pictures to see what's going on the other side of the circuit. Now, when we were doing the Spa 24 Hours, there wasn't 24-hour pictures. So we were relying on timing and scoring and any sector times and things like that we could see. But I used to volunteer to do the overnights because I didn't think it was fair to put anybody else on when all you could see was headlights and you were peering and going, that is that Ferrari? No, it's a course car. Sorry, you know, I mean, it was that bad.
No, totally. You felt like a prime to be a fool at all occasions.
Absolutely.
But you know, you also think about what the camera crews can see through their viewfinders. That has advanced so much because otherwise, I mean, their job was just hideous at night, and if it's raining as well, good grief.
Well, and colour viewfinders, because even with colour cameras, and Andrew, you'll know this, even with colour cameras, you didn't always used to have a colour viewfinder. Monochrome.
Oh, you didn't always have a coloured monitor.
Oh, exactly.
When I did the 1976 Japanese Grand Prix, James Hunt won the World Championship. Both BBC and ITV covered that race.
Yeah.
But my work colleague, Barry Gill, was doing it for the BBC in Japan. Nice.
Yeah.
I was doing it in ITN at Wells Street on a black and white monitor.
On a rather rainy day with lots of...
And just we got a moment. We were managing James Hunt at the time. He came back, and I managed in the VIP media suite his homecoming. And there was loads of press there, and he'd been enjoying his success, shall we say that?
Yes, indeed.
Always a one.
Very nice.
But one Japanese fan, as he got on a plane, gave him a monkey with cymbals.
That you wound up and did ting. Yeah.
He sat in a press conference. Every time somebody said, "Well done, James," he pressed a button. This monkey clapped the cymbals. It was bizarre, to be honest. But that was James for you. One person on the move now, moved up into 10th place, British driver Andy Newell. Now, Andy's an interesting guy. He's built a lot of Cobras in his time, and GT40s, particularly into the Jelsco company, which he's recently just sold. But he's driving with, must be one of his clients, Alexandra Kolb, and he's another Kolb, but he's a fine peddler, is Andy Newell.
The bigger the engine, the better for him. He really loves a big old McLaren.
Yeah, I mean, he told me...
Big inches are our friend.
I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and he said, you know, I can really concentrate on my racing now. So I basically sold the business. My son's running it in a way, but he's just really doing parts. But we aren't building GT40s anymore. And he's having a lot of fun. And there he is, doing some good times.
I hope you're enjoying the atmospheric shots that we're
look at that shot.
giving you. It's incredible.
See the individual grains of gravel there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the good news is they're largely in the gravel trap because
True.
up at Bruxelles, it's quite frequently scattered with gravel. But I must say, the driving standards have been really good. We've had not just this race, throughout today. Bear in mind, all these drivers came here a while ago for testing, but they had a full day of dry track running yesterday, the Friday at Spa-Francorchamps. But today, conditions, we had a bit of qualifying in the morning, but then it moved to racing and it had already started drizzling. It's been raining more heavily since, and it eases in and out, but they've largely kept it on the island, and they also have done that thing which is largely leave the gravel in the gravel traps, and particularly in the dark, the last thing you want to find is a track that suddenly has got bits all across the track.
We've said that, but to finish off this evening, of course, we've got the historic touring car challenge. Before that, we've got the LMPs and the GT1s back out. This is very much going to evoke nighttime at Le Mans and, you know, fantastic thoughts of those cars, the early 2000s. The historic touring car challenge. Well, touring cars traditionally have the oft repeated, you know, all arms, elbows and door handles on that. I think because these are classic cars, we will see a little more respect than that, but they'll finish things off for Saturday night, and that comes at 23:15 local time for an hour. So we will go into Sunday morning here.
It's their version of the Spa 24 hours. It's just they're just making it the night time segment.
It was a great touring car race, the Spa 24 hours. I love it. I mean, it's a GT3 race now, and it is an incredible entry for the CrowdStrike 24-hour race.
75 cars, I believe, which is extraordinary. When I started coming in the 80s,
there are classes within that, but the classes are for the drivers.
They are the identical cars. It's just down to driver ranking as they go pro, gold, silver, bronze, and pro-am, so 4 subclasses. But, you know, when I started, you had these, you know, maybe half a dozen cars that were going for outright victory, and then you had cars with far smaller engines that could still place really well in the European Touring Car Championship, whatever, little Toyota Corollas, but it was the diversity I loved.
We've got a great battle, you know, going on for 10th. We've got 3 or 4 all running within a second of each other. So see how that
10th at the moment.
Yeah, I see how
180.
Greenshaw's caught them up as well. So that's a good battle. Another Brit we haven't mentioned, Mark Hales, long-time journalist, drove all of Nick Mason's cars for him over the years. Wrote a wonderful book about driving Nick's cars as well.
Better than that, that book also had a sound attached.
It did, yeah.
Engine notes are so important in life, but particularly, you know, when you come to a track, it's visceral, and it's when you're suddenly presented with an engine note you haven't heard for decades. And we had this at the Goodwood members meeting when they brought back, you know, the Gordon Spies Ford Capris and the Rover ST ones. It was fantastic because the engine notes, the backdrop of touring cars in my childhood and just going to teenage years. To hear them again, it's delight. But yeah, that was definitely a wonderful set of audio clips with that book that Mark Hales did. Long time ago now, though.
Yeah, got some pit stop infringements coming in. Again, not bothering the sharp end of the field, but I'll go through them for you anyway. The first one, which is a 48-second penalty. Now that'll be a multiplier of how long they were short in the pits, how long they were short, how much time they were short as to the mandatory time, and that is the number 41, which is the Anthony Trowen BN7 Austin Healey, the Healey 3-litre from 1965, and a 153-second time penalty for the number 5 of Alexis de Beaumont, and also a 27-second time penalty for the Jaguar E-Pipe. Oh, now this is significant because that's the Nigel Greensall car.
Oh, dear.
And John Spears. Now that car had dropped down a little bit, hadn't it? But that's 100 and, what did I say for that? 27 seconds for that. And I'm not finished, by the way. Sorry
well,
about
they were investigating 10 when I last looked. So
were they?
10 cars, not number 10.
147 is Guy Grant and Mark Hales, and that will be 111 second time penalty. I expect to see more of those coming in. And again, this is basically blowing out the minimum pit stop time infringement. There is a set time for each of the categories that you've got to stay in the pit lane, and if you do not abide by that, for every 1/10 of a second that you get short, you get a time penalty. It's multiplied up, normally 3 times.
It does seem no penalties at all for the number 76 crew. Abraham Bontrapp started. Olivier Hart took over that 76 Shelby Cobra, one of the 289 models. He was 50-something seconds clear. Forget that. He's now 1 minute and 19 seconds clear of Maxime Guyenard in another Cobra. The best of the E-types is 3rd place, but doing pretty well actually in the hands of John Minshaw, who's ahead of Olivier Gallon and actually just edging clear. So it's going to be a good day. Already up on the podium has been John Minshaw, where he's sharing with Katerina Kivalova. That was in the Gentleman's Challenge, and now this 2-hour race, he's doing it solo and putting in a really good fist. But Olivier Hart just seems completely at home.
Absolutely. We had a lovely chat earlier in the booth here with Callum Lockie.
Yeah.
I noticed because that car got beached, remember that?
Yeah, he dropped laps.
Pulled out, and now he's in 4th place, I think. 3rd or
5th place in
GT. 5th in GT, yes. Good. Yeah, I hadn't seen Collard in there. But he's certainly moving up to 85 a lap.
Eric van der Poel has cleared off, because him and Callum were close together, and van der Poel is now up into 32nd position when he was battling for 41st and 42nd.
Yeah.
What, half an hour ago maybe? Even perhaps fewer minutes than that. And as I mentioned his name, he's actually now up inside the top 30, because people are having, you questioned this, whether they would have to have 2 pit stops. And there are some cars. Nick Padmore's in for the 2nd time in the Shelby Cobra number 164. Sébastien Berchon in the number 100. And Michel Velter in the Elan S1, Series 1. That's a 2nd pit stop for all of those. The George McDonald Elan has taken 2 pit stops as well, which makes that run at the front of the field by Lando Graf van Wedel in the Series 1 still on only 1 pit stop, albeit with half an hour, 18 minutes, let's call it, still to go. That is a cracking run, and he has blitzed the GT2 category, boys.
I'm just doubling back. I just want to check that he hasn't got a penalty coming his way. I can't remember. There were so many cars under investigation. Nope, he's clear. So yeah, and again, when you have a two-hour driver race, it's about balancing your driver crew, but they're both quick. Both of the
it's about consistency, really. You need someone. There's no point in having someone. I've had this conversation with a few people down through the years who were not professional drivers. Again, I'm not using the G word for this. And I remember one of them who turned out to be very, very good. Actually, fought really hard to race, and he would ask me at Le Mans, right, before I get in the car, and I'd get a text, who am I racing? Who am I racing? And I would say, you're not racing anybody. Just go out there, do your laps, do your lap time that your engineer tells you you've got to do. You're not racing anybody till the last 2 hours in Le Mans. And your job is to treat it like the most expensive hire car you've ever picked up from an airport, and you haven't got the collision damage waiver insurance. So you've got to bring it back the same way you took it out. It can be dirtier, but it hasn't got to have any damage. And it's about consistency. It's no point in being 2/10 off your pro driver one lap and then putting it in the gravel and losing 2 minutes the next lap, or having a half spin and losing 6 seconds. And I know of what I speak, because I've done it myself. You get over enthusiastic, overconfident, you put in your best lap, and then you try to brake a little bit later the next time around, and you can't. Physically, you can't get over the laws of physics.
Sometimes easier said than done, though.
But I know, exactly. You get the red mist when you're chasing somebody and trying to race somebody. But, you know, it's...
Simply run out of talent.
Yeah.
Right, 2 overtaking manoeuvres in the top 6 positions, because John Minshaw, I thought he was keeping Olivier Gallon at bay, but it's now a Shelby Cobra 1, 2 and 3 in this race. Gallon goes up into 3rd place. John Minshaw back to 4th in his GT4 class leading Jaguar E-Type, and Frederick Bouvy has just moved ahead in his Shelby Cobra of that Graf von Wegel.
So that's dropped down to 6.
Not surprising, horsepower wins out.
Yeah, absolutely. But Hart driving away from everybody at the minute, 90 seconds away from everyone else.
He's gaining about 5 seconds per lap, sometimes 6 seconds, over Maxime Guénat.
And they're all the same class cars. They're all right. There's 2 Daytona Coupes following a 289, but I mean, really, that's extraordinary. That is very, very impressive indeed. His last lap at 3 minutes 11, the best of the chasing pack, a 3:13 from Olivier Guillaume. Maxime Guénat, a 3:19.2. John Minshaw, 3:17.6. Now, he's not in a similar class car, in fairness. But my goodness, Phil Keane in that 180, the 180 GT4 third place car, Jaguar, with a 3:11 last time around. Wow, a 10th away from the leader of the race last time around. That's impressive by Phil. That's by far the fastest GT4 car out there at the moment. Now, he is 4 seconds away from second place Jonathan Mitchell. He's 9 seconds a lap quicker at the moment. How far is he behind John Minshaw for the win in the race? I think it's a little bit beyond him 40, at the moment.
40 seconds or so, 40 plus seconds. So Minshaw surely has got this one under control. Running 4th overall.
Yeah.
Just going down through the classes, we've got the best race leader, that's Olivier Hart, GT5. 4th place overall is the top car in GT4, which is John Minshaw in his Jaguar E-Type. Lando Graf von Wedel leading GT2 in 6th. Then we need to work down to GT3, which is in 19th place overall. Andrew Smith on the charge in his Austin Healey, as you'd expect. And he's got a target. He's chasing after Biotto's Chevrolet Corvette. That's the car number 48, which by my memory is 1963 split window C2 Corvette. Looks great.
Phil's going to get, if he gets a clear run through the traffic, he's going to cut. John Minshaw can't afford to doze here because he's losing 6 and 7 seconds a lap to Phil Keane. Phil, I don't think has got enough time left. There's probably 4, maybe 5 laps left. So possibly 30 seconds could go there of that 40-ish seconds. But that's if they both stay at the same pace as they are. And as Paul Trustwell always says, and you'll hear him on Radio Le Mans again this year, 91.2 around the circuit and around the world on RS1. If everything stays the same, then, but he'll always say, if everything stays the same, which it almost never does in endurance racing and multi-class racing, of course, he's absolutely right. Something intervenes unless you have a perfect race.
Yeah, we're into our last 15 minutes of this 2-hour epic in the rain here at Spa-Francorchamps, and Cobras showing their grunt really paying off around this track.
The rain is actually
look at that shot. Look at that shot.
Beaming down now, diagonally. You can call it the angle, but basically it's hitting the track very, very hard indeed. The drivers have been running. It was nearly dark at the start of the race. It was the gloaming, or the late gloaming, I think one would say. But certainly these weather conditions have made it harder. But it was a steady drizzle, and now it's certainly picked up quite big time. What have we got left on the clock? A dozen minutes, one would suggest. There it is. So with a lead of over 1.5 minutes, in fact, 1 minute and 35 seconds, and going away, Olivier Hart has got this one in the bag. Car number 76, one of the sort of mid-blue Cobra with a red band over its nose. Looks great, but I mean, Abraham Bontrapp, who started the car, did a good job, but Olivier Hart's been on another planet.
And what he's got to do now is make sure he doesn't do it extra lap. So he needs to just
do the math.
Do the arithmetic himself. He'll be looking at the timer within the car. Everybody has one, if you remember to start.
They're very.
That was very honest, wasn't it? Having far too much fun he is this weekend.
They're very switched on, the Hart team. You know, a whole family switched on, and David and so on. They'll be monitoring this situation, and he'll know where he is just from the pit board. But 95 second lead, and
Nigel Greensall pits.
Oh, well, he had that penalty, didn't he?
Yeah, but that would have just been added onto his race time. So that must be fuel. That must be fuel.
Okay, I'm picking up on a really good little scrap over second place in the GT2 class, and it's 2 Lotus Delans, and they're separated by just 3 seconds. Andrew Haddon chasing Ed Morris, so that's car 79 after 124. Of course, that class is being dominated by the Graf von Vadels, they're in 6th place overall, well clear. But, you know, you have to, in a field that we started with 56 cars, you've got to go looking for stories. They're there, but some great scraps up and down the order, but no one out there can really see what they're doing.
Andrew Hatton's a well-known racer in Lotus Elan's and Lotus Cortinas and so on. Done some single-seaters as well. So he's a good peddler with lots of experience.
Times are going out. Even at the leader. The leader's eased his pace, you might imagine. Maxime Guinard only 2 seconds slower than the leader last time. Still a 3:14 for Olivier Gallant, so, you know, he's still pedaling along. John Minshaw, though, a 3:23.5 in that leading GT4 car. Phil Keane is now up into 2nd position in GT4, having passed Jonathan Mitchell, who's also gone past Baz Janssen. So they're now up into 7th and 8th, respectively. And Phil took another 7 seconds last time around out of John Minshaw. So both of their times are going out a little bit. Phil had a wee bit of a scrap to get through there. So I need to see Phil's next time. That car's capable of doing 11s, but possibly not in these conditions now, as it does seem to be getting worse, Bruce.
It does. I mean, you know, Phil is catching, but it surely can't be enough. Under 10 minutes to go, under 9 minutes 20 to go. The time's come down, but how much has John Minshaw got the feel for this car right now? He's driven solo. Remember, we had that little moment at the start of the race with going sideways, which is something you forget in the midst of time.
It might be that he's managing his fuel as well, of course, with 9 minutes to go, with 1 or 2 people who seem to have taken a second pit stop. In fact, a whole bunch of people in the midfield who are in their second pit stops now, which is extraordinary. In fact, there's Anthony Schraer and the Austin Haley 3 litre just coming in again.
And Callum's moved up into 3rd spot in his class.
Yeah.
Well done.
You know, I noticed when we started talking about him a while ago, after the car had been spun and lost a lap and a half in the gravel up at La Source with his teammate Simon Arabigan, he was in 7th place in class, but he just kept on climbing. I think he's got a good minute to gain, which he will not manage as he chases on to try and gain another position. But that's been a good climb, as you'd expect from the Scottish star.
Yeah. Van der Poel now up to 28th position, having started that fight back somewhere in the 40s. Andy Willis' Lotus Elan has stopped out on the track. Number 105 car. Not sure where that is on the circuit. We'll wait for race control to tell us. The bright red rain lights glistening in the full darkness now here at Spa-Francorchamps as we come towards the end of the anti-penultimate race of Saturday. 7 3/4 minutes to go. Olivier Hart back down into the 3:11s again last time around. John Minshaw in that battle that we're keeping an eye on, 3:21. Phil Keane, 3:12. Another 9 seconds disappearing. But there's cars between them. Only Frederick Bouvy in the Cobra between them on the timing and scoring. I think time is not on the side of Phil Keane here.
Bouvy's been doing a really good job. You know, he's a Belgian driver. He's close on 60. They've been winning in GT4 in France in a Ginetta G56, believe it or not. He's raced his. He's had a win here in a Spa 6-hour classic in his class in that Cobra.
4th, he's the first person off the podium at the moment.
Yeah, and he's had a win. He's had a win in Fun Cup as well here. So.
Fun Cup round. It's a 25-hour race. They have all of those chassis, all those cars built by WRT.
Yeah.
And they have a class in that race where part of the regulations are you have to carry a passenger.
Yes.
So there is a specific class for a car with 2 people in it. You can rotate them. Just have to be the same passenger, obviously, for 24 hours.
Just a light passenger,
so you rotate the people through.
Probably pays for the ride, you know. Well, they all pay, and then
if you have a sponsor, then
I don't think I've put my hand up for that actually.
What, as a passenger?
No, I've been in a Can-Am car with Danny Holm.
Have you?
Around Goodwood, very fast. And
Lord, what a circuit to do that.
That wouldn't have had a proper seat.
It didn't have a proper seat, and it did not have safety belts. I had to hook arm around the roll cage where there was a bar, and about 5 of us went that day, and the late great Alan Hendry was one of them, but there was another journalist, Scottish guy, and if you couldn't take it, you had to tap Daytona on the helmet and come in. One of the guys couldn't take it. Disorientation, unbelievable. The braking was the most stunning thing.
Always
the braking was the most stunning thing. I've been around Donington in one of those Nissans we saw racing earlier. That was pretty impressive, but nothing like going in a Can-Am car like that.
I went out in Dubai in the Le Mans winning Aston Martin with Richard Riedel strapped into a passenger seat, I might add. And the obviously I ride motorbikes, and the acceleration isn't what takes you, it's the braking. And just how late Ricard was braking around the short circuit at Dubai was just incredible.
My first editor of Autosport, the wonderful Quentin Spurring, said there was a moment of realisation going down the Mulsanne Straight when he wasn't strapped in as a passenger in the days before the chicanes at the Mans. He suddenly thought, what am I doing?
In what? What was he, the passenger-ing in?
I am trying to remember. It wasn't a Porsche 956, but it was of that ilk.
So that had been 200,
I can't.
well over 220 miles an hour. That would have
holding on with one hand.
The heart is consistently quicker than anybody else. It's still going away.
17 last time around.
No,
Minshaw dropped to a 27 last time around. Phil Keen a 3:15. And it's now only 17 seconds away. Possibly 2 laps to go.
And he could get by Bouvy as well, because he's only 2 seconds ahead.
He needs to get past Bouvy
he will.
And get up the road to try and get on the tail of John Minshaw. I think John Minshaw's saving fuel here.
Could be, could well be.
We'll see if we can get a word with him later on. There's a warning flag at turn 11, which is poo on out from memory. And I can see the yellow flags. And that is for, is that a car that's stopped there as well? It is, I'm being told from race control, the number 68 car is moving slowly, which is the Mustang GT350, the Adrians, Armand and Sam Adrians, the Netherlands drivers. And I think it's Sam who's finishing off that race. So coming into the last minute of the race, or the last lap, where is the leader? That is the question. Try and pick him up on the tracker. Looks like he's coming to Le Combe at the moment. So I think it'll be last lap next time by, and Phil Keen now 14 seconds behind John Minshaw for the win in GT4 and 4th place overall. And last time he took 13 seconds out of him on that lap.
And past Bouvy.
Yeah, and that included the pass on Bouvy.
And just remember that for many, many years, Phil Keen would race with John Minshaw.
Yes.
And so, of course,
they
friends,
never,
colleagues, but, you know, got to have a little bit of professional.
They never won the British GT Championship. They finished second 3 times with the Barwell car. I think that's right. But they never quite won it.
Coming up, we've got the endurance racing legends back with the LMP ones and GT ones, and we'll finish off the evening with the historic touring cars going through into tomorrow morning here in the Ardennes. Last lap now for Olivier Hart, who has driven impeccably. He eased off to a frankly for him, pedestrian 3:20, which is still faster than most of the field. Maxime Gunart has kept his pace up. I did a 3:17 last time around in worsening conditions. That's only 2 seconds worse off than that car's very fastest lap. Another car pitting late. This has to be fuel for people coming in here with a lap to go. And that's one of the 26Rs. That's the third place car in GTS, Andrew Haddon, in the number 79 car.
They shouldn't have run out of fuel.
So they didn't fill it then?
Well, it may be another problem. It could be another problem.
So that is the second pit stop for that car. And Phil Keane down to 6 seconds now on John Minshaw. The 33 E-Type and the 180 E-Type are battling for honours in that category out in the darkness. And if I'm smart, I'll put up the tracker on my screen.
Well done.
And be able to tell you where they are on the circuit. And we've got yellow flags out there. The leader coming down through Pouhon now. And some, minute and a half, 2 minutes behind is the battle that we're keeping a close eye on between John Minshaw and the E-Type and Phil Keane in the similar car. Both cars from 1965. And Keane, well, if he took 10 seconds again last time around, so he's going to be right there. And he's gone through.
Gone through, yeah.
He's gone through. As they start the last lap, he's gone through and overtaken John Minshaw. Extraordinary. That was 40 seconds plus, not 4 or 5 laps ago. And that is Phil Keane with absolutely eyes on the prize. He's not going to get any further up the overall standings. I suggest that that's not what he was aiming for. He was looking for top step of the GT4 podium, and he's claimed it there as he goes on to his last lap.
You know what? The ability to see in the dark as well is something.
Yeah.
I'm not being stupid here, but Phil is a little younger than John.
John's eyes might be starting to feel very tired indeed. Just agitated, really.
Well, also, John has done the race in its entirety, whereas Phil took over from Lee Mole.
Yeah.
That's been an extraordinary second half of the race. And that might be one of the drives of the day so far. As the checkered flag is out and seen by the Shelby Cobra of Olivier Hart, who has driven an absolutely faultless race, Andrew.
Yeah. Flying Dutchman there. He looks a bit of a film star, really. He's got long blonde hair. He certainly looks the part, and helped so much by his father, David. But they make a great pair. But Olivier Hart, wonderful drive from him. Maxime got another young guy in a second, and then Olivier Gallon, who led early on in third place, and then Phil Keane winning his class.
Lando Graf van Weidel has gone through, winning in the GT2 category, and a massively creditable 7th overall in the Lotus Elan, the S1 from 1965.
And Andrew Smith has just crossed the line in the Healy to take that class victory.
Correct, in 16th position in the Mark 1 from 1961. And I reckon only the top 6 cars on the lead lap at the end of that. Such was the pace of Olivier Hart. There was 100 seconds between him and second place. I think we can call that a dominating victory, Bruce.
I think we can. And I think a lot of other cars would have been on the lead lap if he hadn't extended that lead to such an enormous margin. But it was the way he was sometimes gaining 7-8 seconds a lap as he was pulling clear of Maxime Guinard. No disrespect to Maxime.
Still hasn't crossed the line, by the way. And I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with the second place Daytona.
Just emphasises how big the gap was.
Yeah, absolutely. There he goes. Oh, he cut it to 1 minute 37.4 on the last lap, did Greenholm. I suggest that Ollie was slow. Yeah, Olivier Hart did, I think, possibly his slowest lap of the race on the last lap at 3:22.499.